Over the past 20 years, access to the mainstream media has grown tremendously. With the birth of the internet, social media, and news sites, mass media is now more easily accessible than ever before. Coverage of news and current events is more prevalent than it ever has been, as updates are made to major news sites as often as every few seconds. Monopoly news organizations are often able to manipulate their coverage to create media bias. They accomplish this by distorting quotes, manipulating film, exaggeration, opinionated articles and segments, or simply not telling the whole story. However, bias in the media has been around much longer than the internet and social media. One of the most famous examples of major media inaccuracies was William Randolph Hearst's yellow journalism. Hearst used this method of sensationalism to capitalize on people's interests regarding the situation in Cuba at the time. Major news organizations have even used their power and influence over the people to attempt to sway the outcomes of presidential elections and political events.
November 13, 1969, Vice President Spiro Agnew addressed a Republican Party conference in Des Moines, Iowa. He argued that the big three networks of the time, ABC, NBC, and CBS, were biased against Nixon administration policies, in particular in regards to a recent Vietnam speech by the president. All three networks preempted their evening news programs to broadcast Vice President Agnew's remarks live.
The purpose of my remarks tonight is to focus your attention on this little group of men who not only enjoy a right of instant rebuttal to every presidential address, but more importantly, wield a free hand in selecting, presenting, and interpreting the great issues in our nation.
Ironically, major news networks broadcasted this speech live, though the basis of it was to expose their inaccuracies. A similar thing occurred when Republican candidate Ron Paul was interviewed on Fox News Live regarding the presidential election.
What's going on within your party?
Well, I don't think the message is very clear. I have a very clear message, but I'm challenging the status quo. The rest of the candidates are part of the status quo, and nobody seems to be happy because they don't see what difference they're going to make. You know, this whole idea. I mean, if you look, somebody told me, you know, from this last debate, I thought I did rather well. And they went down the number of times they mentioned the other three candidates in the review of the debate. And it was, you know, like 80, 90 times, depending on which it was. I was mentioned one time in all the discussion of the debate after it was over.
Right.
Now, you might argue I didn't win, or some people argue that I did.
You had the juice.
But it deserved more than one mention on all the stations. Somebody went and added these all up.
Thank you, Thomas.
So what's going on here? You're in this media business. I'd like to know exactly how that comes about.
Oftentimes, unfortunately, the media is able to manipulate news stories and remain undetected. However, when it comes to live television, there are many more variables involved, and biases are much more difficult to hide. Thankfully, there are organizations whose purpose is to detect and expose media bias and inaccuracy. A major example is AIM, or Accuracy in Media. AIM is an American non-profit news media watchdog founded in 1969 by economist Reed Irvine. It critiques botched and bungled news stories and sets the record straight on important issues that have received slanted coverage. As a whole, the people's opinion of the media's accuracy has been on a relatively steady decline. Unfortunately, but rightfully so, fewer are seeing accuracy and fairness in the press. People's satisfaction with news and media coverage has been on a steady decline. Media and news outlets have managed to gain a staggeringly negative overall opinion. Unfortunately, media bias could be costing a lot more than the people's good graces.
7% of people asked by the Pew Research Center said the media tend to favor one side in America, compared with 53% in 1985. Is it ostensibly unhealthy to have partisan cable networks?
I think there's nothing wrong with opinion journalism. There's nothing wrong with advocacy journalism. I mean, it's a long tradition in this country as well. I mean, we have editorial pages in our newspapers. We have op-ed pages, and that's perfectly healthy. I think the challenge comes when the line gets blurred, when people are not saying, yes, I'm giving you my opinion, rather than telling you what I think is the truth.
You mean where news is presented in an opinionated manner?
Exactly right. Because I think we owe it to the audience to tell them when we're telling them something because we think it's true, as opposed to when we want it to be true, or even worse, when we think they want it to be true. And that's the danger. But I also think, despite the fact that there's roles for opinion journalists, there's also a role for some organizations who are just trying to get it right.
Just report the news?
Yes.
Without opinion?
Yes, exactly right.
In all the time that you worked at ABC, did you see the relationship between the media and politicians in particular break down further as time went on? Did it become more fractious?
Well, it changed fundamentally. I mean, there were various incidents that happened. Obviously, during the Monica Lewinsky time, it was very fractious. The 2000 election that I write about in the book, where we got it wrong a couple of times in one night.
Yeah, fascinating, yeah.
That was a breakdown, certainly.
And on that point, so that's interesting, because when I read that, I was really struck by the fact that today, with the internet as it is, with all the bloggers as they are, with the immediacy so much faster even than 2000, these mistakes will keep coming.
It is up to the people to voice the importance of accurate and non-biased news stories, remain informed on current events, and learn how to detect bias in the media.